the web of life.
Let me try from the first to indicate the point that we're aiming at. The point is this, that human consciousness is at the same time as being a form of awareness and sensitivity and understanding, it's also a form of ignorance.
So it was that dark feeling of who am I? And it was scary. It was scary to look at this person in the mirror and know it wasn't me. And so that was real.
When was this?
This was, well, sometime when I was living in New York City. So that was over 20 years ago, or about 20 years ago, even. And
what was the context in your life at that point?
I had just come out of like a really long-term relationship, and I quickly jumped into another relationship. So I didn't give myself that time to figure out what happened with that one that was very toxic, and then I went into something else that I wasn't ready for, but I decided to jump into that. And I will say that a lot of that has to do with self-worth, and knowing that now, reflecting back onto that level of self-worth, and finding worthiness in the wrong places, for sure. But looking at her, thinking that it was just a sense of loneliness, darkness, unhappy, not really knowing where I was physically in space, and again, like I was teaching and I was going to the gym and I, nice friends and all that, but it was that lack of purpose, it was that lack of connection to who I was and who I wanted to be, a massive sense of loss, being lost. So yeah, it's almost like this world around me was out of my control, and allowing my world to be controlled by other things, which was a sense of safetyness. That was where I seek to be safe and feel protected, even though because I value safety and protection very much. But it wasn't the right kind of safety. It was the wrong kind of safety. It was the wrong kind of protection. When you're aware of even that level of disconnect, discord that you just said, which is a great word. Again, I think for me, that's actually part of the beginning of the journey. And you might be right? You might not be completely aware, but something is there. It's nudging you, niggling you. It's present, and I was very good about, again, pushing it away, avoiding it. Because if I was to bring that out, I'm going to disrupt all the other things in my world. Like, I need to make sure that all these other people in my life are happy. So I got to keep the peace. So there's those moments where I was being nudged by the greater spirits, whatever you want to call it, the universe, and I ignored for a very long time that this was going on inside me, especially looking back on those reflections of myself and knowing I don't know who that person is.
I definitely want to dive deeper into the specifics of what that evolution looked like, but can you break down the different stages that were in your life after New York? So about 20 years ago, you were in New York City. You had a lot of things going for you, according to the criteria the world will kind of, put upon you. But you recognize that deep down something wasn't right, and you had to realign with who you were. So after New York, what were the next stages, and maybe we can kind of dive into those specifically afterwards.
Well, the next stage was my husband and I, at the time, we moved to, whatever, my husband and I, we moved to another country. So that was about 6 years in New York, living, yeah, I guess back then, at that time, living my best life. But then not really. So, and then moving to Hong Kong was another massive shift in my life. Very willingly. It was still a massive change. Took about a year to settle in there, but I'm just following this program of you move, you get married,
The curriculum.
The curriculum.
Where are you from?
East Coast, Connecticut.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that.
That was like my main stint, but I lived in a little bit of Boston, a little bit of New York. At one time, also, Maryland when I was very little.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been exposed to Maryland before as well, and then Hong Kong for 17 years.
17 years in Hong Kong.
Yep.
Do you think the willingness to do that type of journey came from this unconscious or maybe subconscious recognition that you weren't totally aligned, and potentially hoping that the change would help you refine that voice that's inside of you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was definitely willing. There was a couple things. I was willing to move to another country because that's what my husband wanted. So I was supporting him.
Mm.
I thought, we talked about it extensively before we moved, and I also thought if I said no, he would resent me. He would resent that his profession, like being in the professional world, if he didn't have the opportunity to do that and I didn't support that would be on my shoulders. So there was that weight I put on myself of I will do what he wants me to do because it will make him happy.
Mm.
I'm also the mindset of, and when I moved to New York City, I moved to be with him in New York City. My mindset was also, you know what, this is actually not only was I wanting to make him happy, I was also choosing to say, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity to move to New York City. Like when I can do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have the space, that's where I'm at in my life. Why not just take a chance? Nothing is a mistake. Everything is an opportunity in my perspective. So I just thought, I'll give New York a try. What's the worst that can happen? I move back to Connecticut, or I move back to Boston. I just moved from Boston at that point, Boston to New York. And then I just thought, all right, well, let's give Hong Kong a try. I'm not super, I'm close to my brother and my sister for the most part, but I'm not super close to my family here. It's changed since then. And I had a couple good friends, but nothing was keeping me here in America, now that we're back in America. So again, I was very willing to try something new and go on a new adventure. And I would say, like, New York was a lonely time for me as well. As much as I love the city and I was going through what I was going through emotionally, mentally. My husband traveled all the time. He's gone. So it was like another, I felt like that I was able to, when I was able to navigate that in New York, I thought I can do this again in Hong Kong. So every time you do something that's outside your comfort zone, as scary as it is, it's always opportunity. I'm just going to jump in and try. And even though, again, those moments are like, what am I doing here in Hong Kong? Like, what is this? Again, I know why I'm there. I'm supporting his career. And I always said to myself, I'm not leaning on him. I will make it work. I will make this work. So it took me, of course it takes time, and you have to figure out your people, who your people are, your tribes are. And, but I would say I found myself in Hong Kong. It was eye-opening to experience this culture. It still took some time. I had my babies there, and then I went through my own process with being a mom and that journey itself. But yeah, it was amazing the people that are all there are very like-minded people for the most part once you find your tribe. No one has their family around.
What are those minds like?
People they want to travel. They're curious. They want to have fun. They're very, very sporty. Like lots of outdoor sports, lots of social gatherings. People the friendships are your family. That's most people's families would travel in and out, or you would travel home for the summers, and that kind of thing. But your family was the ones that you saw every day, and those are the other parents or your kids, or if you join a charity or if you join a club, like those are where you build your friendships. And to this day, I don't know that I would have actually understood what a true connection in a friendship would be. Maybe eventually over time, but I so appreciated. Once I got through I would say the first couple of years, I wasn't necessarily attracted to the girls I was hanging out with. For instance, if I just sort of focus on being a new mom and finding a mom group, and I just did it. I went through the motions of doing that because I wanted my babies to have exposure to other babies, and I didn't want to be lonely, or I just didn't want to sit home with 2 kids by myself. So I would do everything I could do just to interact with other people and other humans. But that still felt lonely because I was like, these still aren't my people. It's not somebody I would call up in the day or the beginning, like if I really needed something or I needed to talk to somebody. I still wasn't really finding those, maybe a few, but I still wasn't finding those deep rooted connections. I just still knew that I'm like, this is still quite surface level. Like I want to, and perhaps it was also like looking back on that, perhaps it was more just, I didn't know who I was and I didn't know what I wanted. Until I figured out who I was, and being okay with not keeping up with everybody else, not comparing myself to everybody else, just being who I want to be, even if it meant being alone, being by myself. That's, for me, knowing that now is much better than being around people you don't want to be around.
Yeah. So, I have a million questions about Hong Kong that I'll probably ask another time. Absolutely. But that's a huge leap of faith because there's the language gap, there's the cultural gap. But it sounds like you were able to take some time to focus on your family, also to learn about yourself as you learn about this new culture. And it seems like you've also brought some things back with you from there as well. How long have you been back from Hong Kong?
Year and a half.
A year and a half. And what I immediately knew you as is someone who likes to create that community and like bring people together and celebrate the differences of the people in that group as well. Has that always been a part of who you are? Is that something you fostered, when you were out there?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's definitely something I feel is a value of mine is to bring is connection. If you were to ask my girls in Hong Kong, that question wholeheartedly, they would say yes. And it was planning gatherings together with various friends, even if they didn't know each other, bringing people together, knowing this would be a good match, a good connection because they have a job mentality description involved where I did bring 2 people together and they're now to this day working together, and they have a great relationship and a great friendship. So knowing that I have no qualms or jealousy about bringing girlfriends together, because sometimes girls can be a little bit like, well, that's my friend and that's my friend, and that doesn't resonate for me at all. I really love community. I really love bringing people together because that's where the magic happens.
Agreed.
I mean, and when perhaps it's like you try to bring people together and maybe that love connection doesn't happen, but at least you tried. That could be like any sort of relationship, a man, woman, man, whatever. It's
man.
All man,
woman,
man,
woman.
whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's like whatever it is. If you connect, you connect. But yes, I would say the sense of community. And I can give you a fun example because we're heading towards Thanksgiving, and I hosted Thanksgiving probably for the last 15 years in Hong Kong. We'd have anywhere from, it started small and then it went up to honestly 50 people with kids. It was so epic. And we'd just have these long tables and it'd sometimes be 30 people at a table, if not more. All the kids are running around crazy in our apartment building, and I have goosebumps thinking about it. All the people.
You were essentially pilgrims.
Yeah, we were pilgrims.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll have to show you some photos. But so this past year, this last Thanksgiving was the first one where they had to figure it out on their own. And everybody was dispersed. Like they all, and I heard from them, like they would just said, we're so sad. I'm so excited for you, Ashley. You're in America and you're doing your thing. But we're so sad you're not here because like you brought that Thanksgiving together. You made it happen. Although everyone made it happen. So yeah, there was that sense of like, I really missed that. And it's okay. This year we're doing about 15 people. So I'll get it going again.
Those are good numbers.
Good numbers. We'll make it work. And I'm always, whoever's walking past right now, if they want to come over, they can come over for some turkey. It is about that like collaboration and being and sharing and just when you're in Hong Kong. That's where that came from for me for sure. I mean, I think I've always had it within me, but then Hong Kong made it just solidified how important it is to include and be so inclusive of everybody. And it may or may not be reciprocated, and that's okay. But it's still like knowing that this person was invited or included, and they either show up or they don't show up, physically, emotionally, whatever, mentally. So yeah, I definitely learned that there from that experience is your family are the people you choose in your life.
It's where the magic happens.
It's where the magic happens.
Do you believe in magic?
I definitely believe in magic, 100%. All of that.
So now you're taking on this really individualistic path of refinding who that Ashley is in the mirror. Right? Like now you're looking at Ashley. Did that transformation begin in Hong Kong, would you say? Or is that something that's very new that you're starting to see that image? Or are you seeing that exact image? What does that reflection look like?
I love that. That definitely became part of the transformation in Hong Kong is looking at that reflection and knowing that that's who I am. And I would say that kicked off about 4-ish years ago. And even up until I would say between arriving in Hong Kong and that 7-year mark, there was still having children and going through that process well before COVID, but it was still a time of self-discovery and figuring things out and choosing to do things that I wanted to do for myself, because I was a dedicated mom, still am, but in a different way, where I was very present in their lives, and we spent a lot of time together, the three of us, me and the boy as well. I mean, as well as my husband, even though when he wasn't traveling. So I was very dedicated in that way. So, yeah, I would say that there's been multiple transformations over time, and the more I put myself out there, the more for instance, like just one of the things I did, which I felt very passionate about for about 5 years, was dragon boating. And that is, I don't know if you know what that is.
No idea, but it sounds intense.
It's so cool. It's one of my favorite things. Like, it was every Friday morning, almost every other, like maybe Monday morning, and it was like this boat of 18 women, and it's people on either side of a boat. I'll have to show you another time, but I knew I always wanted to try it before I left Hong Kong. So one day I went and I became addicted to it. I was just like, this is so me. This is so what I love, being out in the water. I love being with a team that all strives for the same goal. And again, that was like another extension to my family. And the more you feel, I mean, people want to belong. I want to belong where I want to belong, though. That's a difference. Like, I don't want just to be friends with anybody. I mean, I wasn't friends with everybody on the boat necessarily, but I had the core girls that I hung out with, and that were a part of my family. And we've gone on vacations together, and we're still on a chat together, all of us. And we still keep in touch, and there will be forever family. But there is that sense of belonging, and I think that also helped with my self-discovery of when you find these people that do resonate with you, that are aligned with your values, that are curious about who you are, it's almost like it's indirectly and organically you are learning more about yourself and what you want and who you are. I think knowing who you are is vital to the process of feeling connected to yourself, of feeling purposeful, of living within purpose. Too many of us are told who we should be and who people want us to be, and I did that for many years in my marriage. Even well before my marriage, I did that. I could probably go back to childhood thinking I had to keep the peace, make everybody else happy, because it was tumultuous at home or whatever. So, yeah, there's that sense of, again, I'll bring up the word belonging, but the belonging isn't in a healthy, organic way where you do want to belong.
Mm. Do you think that those 17 Dragon Girls helped you realize who you are, or do you think you actually attracted them by saying, hey, it's time to start realigning with the things I'm interested in?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. From meaning, so some of the girls in the boat that aren't necessarily people I would hang out with, then I realized without judgment, why wouldn't I hang out with them? So I think you can learn by things.
Because they're slow as shit.
They're not as fit. Their priorities are different than my priorities. And again, nothing wrong with that. As in, my level of fitness, their level of fitness, my level of dedication to the sport, my level of where I want to put my energy, who I want to put my energy into. And I would say, I'm so glad she's part of the team, like where we all make up the team. Though this isn't somebody that I would be like, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine with, or take a walk. So through that process of almost clearing space and knowing I'm just going to go for that 1 hour, afterwards you're going to have coffee with the particular girls that you have coffee with, and then be okay with that. Even though at times some of the girls in the boat were like, oh, only they have coffee together, and sort of getting over that bullshit too, because you're like, well, that's not my issue. Mm-hmm. Why does it matter if I'm having coffee with these people and you're not? Mm-hmm. If you want to have coffee with them, by the way, you can ask them to have coffee with you. It's
petty.
It's so, I didn't get time for that. So you do learn about yourself when you go through those moments. You're like, oh, well, that's I guess my goal is not to make everybody else happy. Mm-hmm. My goal is to make myself happy. I feel good when I'm with these people. I feel good when I'm on the boat. I'm also okay to be like, I'm going to come into the boat, do my thing, and I don't need to hang out for an extra couple of hours because I feel like I need to stay connected to the boat.
Mm-hmm. Whereas when you were in New York, for example, were you latching onto those relationships because it felt like it was something you were supposed to do?
Yeah. Felt like it was something I was supposed to do. I didn't want to feel lonely. I didn't want to be alone. I wanted but it still didn't feel good. But I was like, at least I was busy. At least I was doing something. Mm-hmm. Because that's what makes you, I don't know, popular in your own mind. Mm-hmm. Because somebody wants to hang out with you. I'm saying that all like sarcastically. I just like, I did. I would just hang out with, someone's like, oh, we should do this, we should do that. Yeah, let's do that. And then you go home and you're like, oh, I feel even lonelier. Like, well, why did I just waste my time doing that? So yeah, you do get to know yourself a lot more when you're in those moments. And then when you meet your like-minded people, that is magical as well, where you're just like, it just feels so organic and so natural, and light and energy just flows through you. And then you walk away from that energized, nourished, whole, even more whole, and just thinking like, I want to see that. I want to talk to her again. Like she was so much added value, right, to like me, to myself, mm-hmm. and I want to learn from people. I want them to be as curious about me as I am about them, because mm-hmm. knowledge is power.
Is power important?
I think power is important in the sense of being empowerment, right? The empowerment of who I am and my foundational being. So not in like a way that's I'm the leader, follow me. I am a leader, though I'm also a follower. You follow when you know when to follow, you lead when you know when to lead. a true leader is also one that follows, because leaders know everything. There's a
Mhm.
reason why they're the leader, for sure. I think, again, this is really where I'm coming from. But then it's like, oh, well, actually, as a leader, I see that you have these strengths, these attributes, and these characteristics that will enhance our team, our army, our whatever. You should follow that.
In talking about empowerment, the power is the understanding that you have the choice to begin refining what kind of life you want for yourself. And it sounds like you have a lot more clarity in the types of relationships you want to be involved with, the types of people you want to be surrounded by, and the types of things you want to be spending your time doing. So, do you feel like getting to the point where you had decided to give yourself permission to make decisions is the final point? Because from then on, it's just a journey? Or do you think there's more to the picture?
I think in some ways when you get into that flow of that, then the journey, it just is. Doesn't mean you don't have your peaks and your valleys, for sure, because that's part of the process of hitting that low and then climbing back up that mountain. I wonder, could it be a combination of both? There's always, the more you expand yourself and you grow, it's so enlightening, and I guess it doesn't feel as heavy. It doesn't feel as like, will this affect everybody else? It's like, this has affected me enough where I want to stand in my power of empowerment, of encouragement, to be authentic, to be myself, to work out what it is what are my wants, my desires, which again are allowed to change, they're allowed to expand, they're allowed to be whatever you want them to be. I wonder if I'm answering the question.
No, it's great.
No, you're not answering.
Yeah, I any answer that doesn't give me one of the two options I presented are more true than the answer to the question I asked, right? I will finally ask, in your last year and a half being here, has that reflection and that image of self become clear? Do you know the seeds that you've planted, or do you plan on planting more seeds? Or anything growing? Is anything blossoming? What does the picture look like now, and what are you excited about?
Yeah, again, like it's just been an awesome shift again, changing countries, and so many seeds I feel like have really begun to, whether they're sprouting, they are, and that's like, there's like this massive amount of alignment recently, which even when you're, so it's almost related to your question before, even though we're going through this like, I'm going through this like, still this radical changes of figure out my place here in Maryland. When one of the things I questioned myself last October, I love crying, by the way. That was a massive, I was like crying, gotta release that. I love it. It's so good for you to like cleanse a soul. And I remember standing in the kitchen in our apartment upstairs and looking around at how overwhelming everything was and felt. For me, it was the priorities in that moment were, I want to find my tribe. My tribe is so important to me. Nothing should be, yes, every day you're by yourself, and there's that sense of like, no one else is going to do it for you, do it for yourself. Though you can be held accountable with your tribe. You can, your tribe has to respect you and love you and be there for you as you would do that for them. So my tribe was priority, purpose was priority. I felt so connected to myself in Hong Kong at so many levels that for me the priority was not going out and finding a bunch of social groups and feeling included and belonged in that way, but I belonged to myself there. Even though I left Hong Kong unwillingly, we'll have some Hong Kong questions another time, but I we left for various reasons, and I wasn't ready to go. But now that I'm here, I wouldn't change it. I'm so happy to be here. And I used to think, okay, well, the environment has to be, and it does have to be important. The environment has to be very important for you, whatever your environment is and whatever it looks like. I miss the beach and the water so much. Though because of, I feel so abundant in so many ways here, doing things like this, doing the Bay Bridge run I just did with your mom, like, I know for me that brings me purpose, and that brings me a sense of belonging, and again, like that connection to people, connection to myself, and community. So I'm just want to embrace and be in the moment of where I am. And I know, and as like when you said that leap of faith and just surrendering, the alignment has really been happening a lot more around me, for me, through me. It's just, and taking those inspired actions, there's just so much alignment, and that is what makes, that's magic.
Couldn't have said it better.
Magic, right there.
Couldn't have said it better.
Oh, I'm sure you could have.
No, I was gonna say magic. Actually, it's the best all-encompassing word for letting the world surprise you once you trust it enough to do so. Like a magician wouldn't reveal its cape to the object you thought it was there, right? It's, you know, you're about to see something special, and then submitting to the experience of the show will surprise you. And cool things you'll show your cards, and cool things will come out of your hat. And
I love that. That's great visuals.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. I'm glad you found those things, and I'm grateful we started this as well. I think it'll help me reconcile the things that are going on in the world and come to terms with my relationship with myself and what that evolution looks like and what that might look like. But for me too, it's been a definite moment where things are starting to align. I feel like a vortex, like things are coming my way. Cool. So it's definitely interesting times. In that way, we're definitely kindred.
I'm very curious to hear about some of your revelations and stories and your own journey of like what led you to choosing the journey, to making that decision for yourself as well.
Yeah.
I know we touched on that a little bit, but then...
Yeah, we did touch on it. I mean, I think curiosity has, always been the biggest thing. So as a kid, I was always curious about this concept of God that everyone talked about. I grew up with a Jewish dad, so obviously, Friday nights were a part of the picture where we celebrated Shabbat, we read from a book, we wore these little hats, and then we did some type of dinner, right? And everything in my life happened at the dinner table. It seemed that way. And I was always questioning, what we were talking about. It was a different language. And I was questioning how such a powerful idea could have captured the minds of so many people, be it religion. So that questioning of God was always a part of my story. And as a human being, then you're also simultaneously, you're grappling with this like huge existential idea. And then over time, you also have to grapple with the material reality of like fitting in and figuring out who you are and realizing that maybe you're not going to go to the NBA. So there's this like evolution we take. You mentioned the process that happens in later years of like, get a good job, like have the good social circle, be an athlete, like, have the relationships, make money. These are all parts of like a story that, should you choose it, can be a script that's written for you. But I've always kind of questioned that. So at various stages of my life. And there always has been a philosophical, maybe artistic twist to that by nature of just how I like to approach things. But right now, I would say, this is kind of weird, but I think the way I would tell the story is more on the spiritual side, because I've neglected that part of me for a couple years. And I was looking back over the last couple days, really thinking about some of the seeds that were planted that helped me really transition onto the lifeline I'm on now. And I grew up, I have, a younger brother, an older sister, and then when my parents split, my dad remarried. I have a stepmom and then a younger half sister. My stepmom's parents, who we call our grandparents, absolutely sweet people, who live in Cottonwood, Arizona. And her dad, Tyler, tall, older gentleman with a mustache, really iconic, really gentle and graceful person. I've always really, really admired him because he has so much peace in him. I've never seen anything like it. He's just unwavering. And he's very quirky. He has a very funny sense of humor, which, I give me a grandpa joke, and, I will laugh onto the floor.
You have to share a joke with us if you remember.
We were in a stationery store once, and someone picked something up off a shelf, and he's like, "Don't do that. It's not stationery anymore." So it's just like dumb jokes that are phenomenal. And when I was a kid, I think I was in high school, and it surprised me how transformative this was. But he gave me a book from Carl Jung, and it was Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, which now, these are ideas I love to think about. But at the time, I was like a 14-year-old kid who had never read a real chapter book. But I would go around and start telling people that I have this book. And that started everything for me, actually, because I knew it was an important thing that I had to get to. But at least I was going and talking about Carl Jung, and then I was meeting people who knew everything there is to know about Carl Jung. So the conversations began, the philosophical drama started to play out. Another thing he did was in passing, he doesn't even remember this. I reached out to him recently to tell him about it. He showed me this set, this numerical sequence called the Mandelbrot set. And it's one of these, I'm not the mind to explain the Mandelbrot set, but what's paradoxical about it is if you were to watch a visual representation of this number sequence, as you zoom in and it essentially reveals infinity through fractals. And I thought that was the most mind-blowing thing because we can't wrap our heads around what's actually going on with this number. And I've always been super fixated on numbers, as I've mentioned. So these are things that happened. These are things seeds that were planted in the back of my head as I did that journey of middle school, high school, university. And then one night, I think one of the more, on the concept of spiritualism and just magic, through my university years, that's when I actually really started to individuate, confident in my own skin, definitely a builder mentality, a leader mentality, had a lot of fun, stories for other days, but I was definitely entrepreneurial as well. And I really wanted to make money. I wanted to have a lot of friends. I wanted to party. I wanted to do all those good things. But then towards, I think my junior, senior year, I was I'm ready. I've had enough. I want to start building and doing my own thing. I don't necessarily need this. I don't see the value in university. It doesn't align. It doesn't make sense to me. And I had this moment one night. And context before that is my mom and I's relationship has definitely taken an evolution. It wasn't as strong as it is now. But I had this moment where after hanging out with friends, I went to bed and I was laying down. And in the midst of being frustrated with my mom, I was probably 20, 21. I was really frustrated with her, and then I said, maybe my mom isn't as naive as I think she is. maybe she plays that card so I don't feel uncomfortable about the way I behave, right? Like maybe she's actually playing a card and just being a mother and looking out for me. And the second I had that, late night, middle of the night, this would probably be the moment where my world changed. If you were to fast forward maybe 30 minutes, I had just woken up from something that changed my life. And that moment was a sober psychedelic journey where after that, kind of transmutation of my mom isn't evil, maybe she's doing this for me, I actually had a mystical experience where my hands were over my head, my face at like different pressure points. I've never done this before. I've never practiced this. It just happened, like a Madura. And on those different pressure points, I was looking upward with my eyes closed. And I felt this pulsating experience, right? It felt like pulses, like flashes going very strong, like higher vibration. And what I started seeing it was fractal world. It was these shapes that we were like always communicating about. Genuine fractal world. Then once I started looking through the fractals, 4 circles of different colors emerged. And then looking through those, and I saw in the distance what looked like heaven. And it was a platinum color. And then an angel came down from heaven. She was also in a platinum color. And I knew that I could ask her what I wanted to experience out of life, like who I was, what I was supposed to do. So I only had the options society gives you. So I was like, do I want to do real estate? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do, like running through like the jobs that you read in the textbook. I had no idea. And then I got to president. And I asked if I needed to be president. And it said president. And I was like, no way that world can be for me. But after that, I immediately woke up. And first of all, I thought I was losing my fucking mind, right? Because it's like, no way this is a reality that can be a part. Like my whole ego, my whole conception of reality shattered in that moment. And obviously, like, my roommates are asleep. I'm, like, walking around my living room as if the whole world just changed. It's such oh, man. Like, I was just, I don't know. I felt like if you were to look at me, I was invisible. Right? And I remember walking around and then laying down in my bed, and then first thing you do is the longest Google search of your life to figure out what's going on. And I came across this, like, picture that showed this kind of deity with different arms, and then at the top of the arms above the head, it showed those 4 color circles, and I just started weeping, crying, like bawling my eyes out. But I didn't know who to tell. I didn't know like what to do about it. I think like a week later, I started talking to my dad about it, and I was crying in the car. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I think they probably thought I was did psychedelics for the first time or something like that. But they do understand that there's more to the world. So it's, I think over time they know it's just one of those moments that happened. But the crazy thing is, something like this happened to me, and then I lived my life as if nothing happened, right? I didn't, it was always back there, but I had to, quote unquote, move on and survive and accomplish tasks and finish school and do all those things. So college was a good experience, learned a lot about myself, developed a lot of confidence. After college, traveled, did some Asia stuff, and then came back, immediately started a corporate career. Did business development stuff, which was kind of artistic, kind of entrepreneurial. Taught me about how even the CEO can be full of shit, so don't deify anybody in your day-to-day life. How to be the youngest guy in a company and stand up for yourself and navigate a lot of difficult circumstances and corporate bullshit, honestly. Then moving on, I decided to move to Austin, right? Move to Austin across the country. And that was another like journey of self, right? Like separating away from the giant friend group I created and like doing my own thing, meeting new people, starting from scratch. Definitely difficulties in there, and then finding my way. And so that had like a lot of opportunities that presented me, but sticking to like the journey I'm on now, again, like the mystical things have been what really carried me. So I had more and more of these moments over time, but very recently they've been accelerating, these like mystical moments. So two that kind of contextualize really what's amplifying what I'm up to now. Was doing software sales in Austin. The writing was on the wall at that company. So once that ended, I started interviewing and like putting floaters out in a bunch of different directions. And the people I was interviewing with were the same things that I was just telling myself I wanted to escape. I knew deep down I wanted to do my own thing, but and then like the people I would like I would be working for if I was to go with any of these companies were the same people I've been spending my time with that I've been trying to escape. So I was like, all right, it's my time to do my own thing. At that point, I was ready to do something different, but I didn't know what. And so I came across this book, which was The Kybalion, which I've told you about many times. And it put together all the pieces of that research I've been doing around these experiences I've had. So like the geometry, the philosophy, the spiritual side of things. And everything came together after reading that. So one night, like I punished this book, by the way. I was like, all the answers are here. I can't like necessarily absorb. I've absorbed it, but I haven't registered everything. But I knew something just changed in me. I knew something has shifted in your words. So I had a dream. I woke up in the middle of the night after reading the book. And I knew when I woke up that I had the exact same dream the night before. So it was bizarre, and I was like, okay, something's going on. I also felt something different throughout. It was like a somatic experience. My whole body was kind of vibrating. So I went upstairs, admittedly a little bit of a night eater, so I just like grabbed a bite of an apple and like sat there, and I was like, this is exactly the sensation they talk about in the book. It's about like this is the principle of vibration. This is what it feels like to be at a higher vibration. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to ask myself the question again. What do I need to do? Out of the middle of nowhere, it just said sauna and cold plunge. And I was like, interesting. I'm going to back pocket that and like, shove this away. Then I go back down to sleep, down to my bed to go back to sleep. But I was like, hold on, maybe I can continue to use this high vibration because this is really different. So I put my hands over my head, over my face again, to see if I can go back to that like really deep, pulsating, like, psychedelic experience. And immediately I went back to Fractal World and started seeing that. But I didn't like try and bastardize it. I was like, okay, it's still there. It still exists. It's still real. Go to sleep. Fast forward 3 months, started a business in sauna and cold plunge, which I'll get into sometime for sure. And then I would say at that 3 month point, I had another mystical experience, and then this changed everything, and this will kind of catapult. I know I've been talking a lot, but
I think it's fantastic.
I had another one where I came across, like I started having more and more data around people who are masters of these types of experiences, people who can give you context for what's going on and the evolution we're going on as humans. And I came across this guy who started something called the Vesica Institute, and his name's Robert Gilbert, and he had a meditation where he like really teaches you how to meditate. And I'd never really understood, like I had a general understanding of the chakras, but he kind of gets into the science of like what the actual energy centers do and what they look like. And that mapping he gave me allowed me to visualize what the energy centers in my body were as I did a meditation. So by simply imagining these things, it took me on a whole new experience that I didn't know existed. And so part of that, I won't get into the specifics, it's like worth looking into for anybody. But Essentially, like if you've seen the Kabbalah tree, have you ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
It's essentially like, it looks like chakras almost,
Okay.
but then it has lines that connect them.
Oh, yes.
And two
Yes.
pillars, yeah. So I'd seen that obviously many times, especially like being like fucking esoteric, like Jewish raised, young wannabe philosopher. And I was visualizing that, and what was crazy about this new meditation I was doing, like imagining my consciousness expanding and coming in, expanding and coming into a center, expanding and coming into a center. As I was visualizing that image, I became that image. So that sounds very hard to understand in coming out of my mouth, but literally like that tree, Kabbalah tree, like I am that. I was that light in light form. Like I had no body. I had nothing other than that. And it was just stillness. I was that light. I had a golden spine. I was that light in a just void of nothingness, dark nothingness. And I realized that I was a light. So, okay, again, that experience ends. And I obviously start fucking weeping because I realize that I'm just a light. And I'm like, okay, well, that'll shatter your ego. Like, I'm just a light. And from that moment, I had a new power. So back to my normal day-to-day, but I actually have a new power. And that is kind of like a gift of intuition. So I went after that, I looked in the mirror, I splashed my face. And I just said, thank you for showing me that. And then all of a sudden, I felt that light. Like, it feels like chills in the top of my head, but also throughout my body. It feels like chills. But now I recognize it as like turning the light on, like the light's on. Mm-hmm. And that light is like my connection to this like greater thing that we're all a part of. And now I can have a conversation with it. So when I'm tapped in, it turns on and I feel it. And that's my like intuition, that's my gut. And now I've just been following that and asking it questions and like having conversations with it. And it's really been putting me on this path. So the last thing I'll put, just to give you like a scaffolding of where I'm at now, is I've been listening to that and seeing where that takes me, and that's been exciting me, and that's been surprising me, and expanding what I think is possible in the world. And I think genuinely anything is possible, and genuinely anything is possible. And the more I remove the shackles of what I think the world is supposed to be and what I was kind of indoctrinated into throughout my years, the more the world has been opening up to me in just really, really profound ways. And I, since then, have never been more excited. I've never been more exhilarated. I've never felt more connected with myself and with the people who've been coming into my life since then. And so now I'm just like really excited to see like what flower comes from this. But I would say the mystical journey has been my path, and I'm sorry for such a tangent.
Oh my God, it's so amazing. I am like ecstatic inside for you, for sure, that you're able to really know when these moments were for you along the way. And I want to learn more about this, your mystical world, and tap into that. You teach me how to do that, because I'm very open to, there is a higher self, there's a higher being, and to tap into that, I think many people probably either don't realize it, that they probably have that within them, and they just ignore
Human
it.
beings have powers.
Totally have powers.
Yeah.
Believe in the power, believe in the magic that it's within us, and to discover that. And as you said, once you discover that, you can tap into it, and your intuition. And I was like, you can ask your intuition some questions from me too. On my behalf. On my behalf. But the intuition is so powerful. It's not the logical brain. It's the heart and the soul and the body. And the more experience you have like these, I hope you're writing them down and documenting them. So
That's what we're doing.
If anything ever happens to you, we got to be able to tell your story. There's so much, and we can come back to this. I wanted to come back. you had something about you sitting at the table with your family. You said that was a time when you felt like you were, like, what was that like when you were sitting around the table with your family?
I love community, and it's such a cliche that you've also said, so I'm just stealing it. But you see on my arm, there's a painting here.
So curious about that. Yeah.
This is a bunch of nude bodies, so like any kids who see it, they're like, "What the fuck?" But it's actually a Matisse painting called Dance, and this painting happened to be above my dining room table. My dad painted it. And it has always spoken to me. Like when I was a kid having friends over, we'd always be like running, playing tag, and you just see them like stop and like stare at these like naked bodies that are just above our dining room table. Because there's a massive like 3-part painting, right? And it's so like I cherish that painting so much because Israeli family, again, like Friday night Shabbats. My dad loves to cook, artistic guy. We were all like sitting there, and that's where I would say emotions were at the highest, right? We fought there, we threw food at each other, we laughed there, we cried there, we talked about, these ideas that I've always been curious about. We regrouped on our weeks, we talked about our days, and that was always important to me. And so, yeah, I mean, the sitting around the table, I mean, when we last spoke, we actually also talked about, like, what my vision is, and it's, like, that table, right? Like, having everybody I love around it and seeing them in their best selves and without having to curate anything, letting them be themselves and connect with the other people I love. Like, that's the dream. There's nothing better than that, and being able to provide that for people and give them that community. And I think it's definitely a trend I'm seeing with people who do the inward journey. They want to share it. They want to hear stories. They're curious. They want to keep learning, and that definitely resonates with me.
And I, just that vision of the table, which is something we both have had that as well. Like our table, talk I have on through WhatsApp, and then even having the Thanksgiving table, and it's not, and for me, and I wonder if you can relate to this, it's not about even me being at the head of the table. I'm actually a witness. I want to watch the unfolding of all the connections at the table. It's almost like I don't even need to be there, but I want to be a witness to the light and the energy around the table and all the people that get to know each other. And it's just like hearing those little conversations and what they're learning. And it's just, for me, I prefer not to actually be at the table. I prefer to just be like the entity or the fly on the wall. But I just knowing that table came together because, the connection in the community. And so I totally, and I even do it with my own children. We would sit down together and I let them talk. I let them talk to each other. It's just so nice to just see that and not have to control the conversation and just allowing it to happen organically. So no, I was sort of visualizing. And I want to add, in high school, I loved art. I still love art. So art, painting, drawing, like photography is definitely something I really love doing. And one of the things I painted in high school was a Matisse painting.
No way.
Yep.
Which one would it look like?
It was just the one. It was just the person with the heart, like dancing with the yellow stars around him. Which one is that one? I don't even know if I can remember the name of it. And I did it, but I did it on the wall of the school. Like, we were allowed to paint in our school. I have no idea to this day if it's even there. I'm sure I took a photo of it somewhere. I'll have to look in the archives from a million years ago when you actually had a photography camera. But it was in the art room for years, and I would go back every now and then to the high school and visit teachers many years ago.
Make sure they didn't paint over that shit.
No, they probably did by now, but I did. I painted a Matisse on the wall, so that's pretty cool. I'm sure there's a name of it. I'll have to look up the name. But that's amazing, that synchronicity. Yeah,
I'm definitely curious to know the name of it.
Yeah, I'll look that up.
I'm sure there's like a hidden synchronicity somewhere in there. Yeah, also dancing. And that's kind of what we're doing. I think like the other thing I'd say is that pattern that we've seen, like you mentioned with your kids, like something that you brought into the world and you get to witness that unraveling, seems to me like a pretty good metaphor for this experience we have, right? Like we know we're all connected to this one source. And maybe that source just wants to sit back and witness that experience over and over again through infinity.
I never thought about that way. That's awesome. Yeah. And I do write about being a witness constantly. But then, yeah, maybe the witness is exactly what you just described.
Think about a ray of light, right? Like that ray that we perhaps all are, unless I'm losing my mind. That ray of light is all attached to a sun, right? So we might have our qualities of the ray we're at, whatever length or girth or like brightness. I don't know the technical term for that, but at the end of the day, it's not separate. It's not separate.
There is so much unity there. You also said, I love the word script. You brought up the word script earlier. And so then would you say, when you think about the word script, you said you were following a script, but then the other concept is writing your own script. Is that more aligned with what you believe? Like you hold the pen to your notebook. You hold the pen. You are in charge of the chapter, that how you want it to be written for yourself. Yeah,
this one, in order to describe, I'd have to get deep into like a whole philosophy that I've put together.
That sounds like another podcast.
Yeah,
I love that.
Well, I would love to go there sometime, but I think to immediately answer the question, I believe that all things is the source, right? Like all is what we're experiencing, and since I am in this context at this point of time, then my choice is to pull into something, the next thing. I can pull in that lifeline, right? And so maybe all the scripts have been written, but I have the sovereignty to select the next script.
Right.
Because perhaps in the past, which doesn't arguably exist, I've decided that that's what I'd want to bring in. That I'd want this context, I'd want this unique experience, and I'd want to get to the point where I feel as strongly as if I get to choose, right? Weird answer. It's hard to get into that.
It is not weird at all. It's so on par with, just for sure the way that I think, and the way that if we could get more people to think like that, and again, that's still like bringing in that faith and that surrender and that allowing it to be, because as you said, I mean, it's there arguably as well. It's already been written for us. The script is there, but then to have the sovereignty to make those choices of how you want that to look like and how you want it to play out for you. But and within that, like we get the nudges from the universe, we get the opportunities from the universe, whatever that is, and then you can still within that make the choices and So in the time before we know what we won't know what the script is until it unfolds, but in that time we can make the choices to be that better version of ourselves, to continue to explore the mystical side of things and be open to all of that's coming through you.
But we get to paint the pictures, right? Like,
not paint by numbers either.
I again, like, we're probably different. We're probably individuating because we want to see it all, right? So I don't think that it necessarily matters if these mystical experiences that I have are the same as the ones other people have. If my Matisse drawing looks like actual Matisse's drawing, like I think there's beauty in the different qualities there, for sure. So I have to ask you, like, have you ever had any moments or mystical moments that have challenged your preconceptions of the way the world works and maybe given you new abilities, so to speak?
And as you were describing all of that and your experience, I was trying to like go through my brain here and be like, okay, I must have some moments where I would say what came up for me originally was the way you described it for sure as your experience, and for me was also, it was so relatable, and what resonated was like, if I so think along those lines of, arguably whatever the past is the past, we're here now, and then what's to come is to come, and so just being present, but appreciating the for me the mindset of being more, and again, like the word spirit can be whatever you want it to be, but spirituality for me linked with like the neuroscience of things and the way that the unconscious and subconscious and the conscious all work together. So it is for me, it's like the science and the spiritual side of things and how that works. So when I started linking all of that together for myself through a mentorship program that I took, which is just the beginning from last October, which actually helped me has brought me to, that's for sure, that's been a moment in time. It's brought me to where I am now in such an important way. But knowing that I have this ability to be more comfortable in the decisions I make for myself and not worry so much about whether or not that resonates with other people or my family. It's continuing on this journey of like, not only am I shedding the old version of me, but you will be shedding people around you, and that's okay too. So I wonder if I'm answering your question. I love the philosophical side of things. It's so real. The things that we should be learning in school, like whatever, we're going to school, like we are doing that right now. But I'm with you on that. Like I really struggle with the whole concept of like you sit behind a desk and you're being dictated to. But it is that knowing that it's not just about reading a book and regurgitating information. We can have the spiritual side. We can have the philosophical side. Everything should be coming. That's what makes us whole. Is being open to all those different types of perspectives, different types of knowledge, and then reading the readings you've read, reading that I've read, and knowing, I'm like, light bulbs go off in my brain. I'm like, wow, that was. I need to pause. I need to think about that, reflect on it, and listen to it again. When I have moments of whoever I listen to on podcasts, and so it's whatever resonates for you with you. And when people ask questions about, like, what do you read? I was like, well, this is what I'm reading right now. However, it may not resonate for you, but it will lead you down another path of what will. And I guess it comes to like your Carl Jung book that was given to you by your essentially a grandfather, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And you at that age, knowing at 14, you're saying that you're like, there's something about this guy that really I'm attracted to, that his peace, his calmness, and you were aware of that. And you knew that, even though you didn't know what that book was, you knew it was important to him. And you're like, if it's important to him, there's something there. And then you showed off your little book so I can visualize you doing like, and then when you opened up your mind to something like that, when we open up our minds to the spiritual side, when we open up our minds to all the possibilities, the philosophical ideas, that's when you really you're opening up that portal of your vortex of this mystical side. This mystical side's already deep within you.
Think back to that kid who was questioning God.
Yes.
What lifeline do you think would be the most exhilarating? I mean, what's followed is exactly that, right? I was sitting there saying there's got to be a next level. There's got to be something after this. There's got to be some special power. And by being so focused between my heart and my mind, right, on uncovering what that looks like, that's the world and reality and lifeline that has come to me. And I think for you, I would ask if that's been similar, right? Like, is there a moment from your childhood that's been pivotal where you said, I do want to know everything there is to know about navigating relationships and taking leaps of faith and meeting people from different cultures and bringing them together and then watching how that plays out? Like, was there something from your childhood that might have asked for that lifeline that's kind of been unraveling?
Well, I questioned the whole God, religion, person, whatever was taught to me growing up in an Irish Catholic family, and being told what to believe in, how to believe in it. And you're gonna laugh. My mom was one of the teachers that taught Catholicism, like the actual, every Wednesday night, we did this in order to, go to the confirmation, and that was, again, like I had to follow a trajectory. When they came to exam time, I failed it. I literally looked at the exam and I was like, I can't answer these questions. Oh no, I can, I just don't want to. That was sort of like, my mom was mortified, and she stood over me, like made me come back again. I don't even know if it was a later date. It wasn't that night, because she was so mad at me. So even then, it was that friction within me. I'm like, I'm going against whatever's inside of me, telling me, these questions are like jumbo on a page. And she stood over me and she made me take the exam, and I freaking did it. And she made me take it. I was so like, I answered all the questions, but I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to recite all of my prayers. And because I didn't do it well the first time when I was being, recite the Holy Our Father. And I was like, I don't know it. And so she's like, well, then you fail. I'm like, okay, I fail. My mom came over and she stood over me and she made me say them all because I did know them. So now, just like thinking back, and the minute, so then you get confirmed. I got confirmed. My friends were doing it. My mom. It was just a pressure, and I just got it done. And
confirmed. Think about that word.
I know. It's like heavy when I say it. It's like restricting, isn't it? Just that word of I'm confirming whatever they wanted me to be confirmed.
Yep, we don't have to worry about this one. Part of the pack.
Not me, though. I was
good.
Yeah.
So I like where this is going.
That's exactly. But I did it under duress. And before you get confirmed, you have to go confess all your sins to a priest. Like how, stripping of your character, of your person, of your soul, by going in there and saying all these things to a stranger. I still remember sitting across from the priest and doing that. And when I actually felt dirtier. I felt not clean. I was like, I just regurgitated all this information to him, and within judgment. He was just like, well, you shouldn't be doing these things. It was awful. But what you get to decide after confirmation is whether or not you choose to go back to church. And I said no, and I never went back.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not going back. I mean, I would go back at Christmas, because everyone wanted to go at Christmas time, or maybe Easter, but it wasn't, I didn't have to go every Sunday or every Wednesday night like my sister and my brother, because they were younger than me. So I was already pushing myself and resisting against that feeling. So on that tangent, I guess it wasn't so the mystical, in a way that if you think about mystical, it can be whatever you want it to be. But it was still part of the journey of not just knowing who I am and what I want. And I never baptized the children, my boys. They haven't been baptized. I want them to choose what they want to choose for themselves. I didn't get married in a church. So I guess over time, those have been my awakenings of, this doesn't feel right. I didn't walk down an aisle. I still got married. I did that. But I did it my own way.
Yeah.
So there is, we have our own way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. And we're just remembering it.
We're just remembering it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's okay, because we're remembering it.
But that's all life is. Where we're just, throw me in any context and I'll get back to where I am. It's kind of like what this world is, right? It's start me from scratch, I bet I'll get back there. And it seems like everyone who decides to do that journey does that. I mean, the language of yours might not be mystical. Maybe I just love that stuff. But for yours, I mean, someone gave you this notion of things that will give you confirmation. Think about that word, right? And then you also went to New York. You had a successful career. You had these, different achievements that didn't necessarily all belong to you or feel like they belong to you. Right. So when you looked at your reflection, you didn't necessarily see yourself. But once you started looking inward, and the people also started to come into your life, and that image became much more 2020, essentially.
I love that.
And yeah, it's like that memory isn't foggy anymore. So that's we've all got our path, and it seems like that's one you picked, and I'm sure much more to come.
Much more to come.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You summed me up. My supposed to sum you up too.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Hopefully it's they're infinite numbers. So, well, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to formally meet you.
Good
I
to
think.
formally meet you.
Yeah.
And there's much more to come.
Awesome. Until next time.